Welcome to today's reading. I'm Beth Fisher, and we're going to be reading 4th Maccabees chapters 5 through 8. The tyrant Antiochus, sitting in state with his counselors on a certain high place, and with his armed soldiers standing around him, ordered the guards to seize each and every Hebrew and to compel them to eat pork and food sacrificed to idols. If any were not willing to eat the defiled food, they were to be broken on the wheel and killed. When many persons had been rounded up, one man, Eleazar by name, leader of the flock, was brought before the king. He was a man of priestly family, learned in the law, advanced in age, and known to many in the tyrant's court because of his philosophy. When Antiochus saw him, he said, "Before I begin to torture you, old man, I would advise you to save yourself by eating pork. For I respect your age and your gray hairs. Although you have had them for so long a time, it does not seem to me that you are a philosopher when you observe the religion of the Jews. When nature has granted it to us, why should you abhor eating the very excellent meat of this animal? It is senseless not to enjoy delicious things that are not shameful, and wrong to spurn gifts of nature. It seems to me that you will do something even more senseless if, by holding a vain opinion concerning the truth, you continue to despise me to your own hurt. Will you not awaken from your foolish philosophy, dispel your futile reasonings, adopt a mind appropriate to your years, philosophize according to the truth of what is beneficial, and have compassion on your old age by honoring my humane advice? For consider this, if there is some power watching over this religion of yours, it will excuse you from any transgression that arises out of compulsion." When the tyrant urged him in this fashion to eat meat unlawfully, Eleazar asked to have a word. When he had received permission to speak, he began to address the people as follows. "We, O Antiochus, who have been persuaded to govern our lives by divine law, think that there is no compulsion more powerful than our obedience to the law. Therefore, we consider that we should not transgress it in any respect, even if, as you suppose, our law were not truly divine, and we had wrongly held it to be divine. Not even so would it be right for us to invalidate our reputation for piety. Therefore, do not suppose that it would be petty sin if we were to eat defiling food. To transgress the law in matters either small or great is of equal seriousness, for in either case the law is equally despised. You scoff at our philosophy as though living it by it were irrational, but it teaches us self-control, so that we master all pleasures and desires, and it also trains us in courage, so that we endure any suffering willingly. It instructs us in justice, so that in all our dealings we act impartially, and it teaches us piety, so that with proper reverence we worship the only living God. Therefore, we do not eat defiling food, for since we believe that the law was established by God, we know that in the nature of things, the Creator of the world, in giving us the law, has shown sympathy toward us. He has permitted us to eat what will be most suitable for our lives, but he has forbidden us to eat meats that would be contrary to this. It would be tyrannical for you to compel us not only to transgress the law, but also to eat in such a way that you may deride us for eating defiling foods, which are most hateful to us. But you shall have no such occasion to laugh at me, nor will I transgress the sacred oaths of my ancestors concerning the keeping of the law, not even if you gouge out my eyes and burn my entrails. I am not so old and cowardly as not to be young in reason on behalf of piety. Therefore, get your torture wheels ready and fan the fire more vehemently. I do not so pity my old age as to break the ancestral law by my own act. I will not play false to you, O law that trained me, nor will I renounce you, beloved self-control. I will not put you to shame, philosophical reason, nor will I reject you, honored priesthood, and knowledge of the law. You, O king, shall not defile the honorable mouth of my old age, nor my long life lived lawfully. My ancestors will receive me as pure as one who does not fear your violence, even to death. You may tyrannize the ungodly, but you shall not dominate my religious principles, either by words or through deeds. When Eleazar in this manner had made eloquent response to the exhortations of the tyrant, the guards who were standing by dragged him violently to the instruments of torture. First they stripped the old man, though he remained adorned with the gracefulness of his piety. After they had tied his arms on each side, they flogged him, while a herald who faced him cried out, "Obey the king's commands!" But the courageous and noble man, like a true Eleazar, was unmoved, as though being tortured in a dream. Yet, while the old man's eyes were raised to heaven, his flesh was being torn by scourges, his blood flowing, and his sides were being cut to pieces. Although he fell to the ground, because his body could not endure the agonies, he kept his reason upright and unswerving. One of the cruel guards rushed at him and began to kick him in the side to make him get up again after he fell. But he bore the pains and scorned the punishment and endured the tortures. Like a noble athlete, the old man, while being beaten, was victorious over his torturers. In fact, with his face bathed in sweat and gasping heavily for breath, he amazed even his torturers by his courageous spirit. At that point, partly out of pity for his old age, partly out of sympathy for their acquaintance with him, partly out of admiration for his endurance, some of the king's retinue came to him and said, "Eleazar, why are you so irrationally destroying yourself through these evil things? We will set before you some cooked meat. Save yourself by pretending to eat pork." But Eleazar, as though more bitterly tormented by this counsel, cried out, "Never may we, the children of Abraham, think so basely that out of cowardice we feign a role unbecoming to us. For it would be irrational if, having lived in accordance with the truth up to old age, and having maintained in accordance with the law the reputation of such a life, we should now change our course and ourselves become a pattern of impiety to the young by setting them an example in the eating of defiling food. It would be shameful if we should survive for a little while, and during that time be a laughingstock for all our cowardice, and be despised by the tyrant as unmanly, but not contending even to death for our divine law. Therefore, O children of Abraham, die nobly for your religion. And you, guards of the tyrant, why do you delay?" When they saw that he was so courageous in the face of the afflictions, and that he had not been changed by their compassion, the guards brought him to the fire. There they burned him with maliciously contrived instruments, threw him down, and poured stinking liquids into his nostrils. When he was now burned to his very bones and about to expire, he lifted up his eyes to God and said, "You know, O God, that though I might have saved myself, I am dying in burning torments for the sake of the law. Be merciful to your people and let our punishments suffice for them. Make my blood their purification and take my life in exchange for theirs." After he said this, the holy man died nobly in his tortures. Even in the tortures of death, he resisted, by virtue of reason, for the sake of the law. Admittedly, then, devout reason is sovereign over the emotions. For if the emotions had prevailed over reason, we would have testified to their domination. But now that reason has conquered the emotions, we properly attribute to it the power to govern. It is right for us to acknowledge the dominance of reason when it masters even external agonies. It would be ridiculous to deny it. I have proved not only that reason has mastered agonies, but also that it masters pleasures, and in no respect yields to them. For like a most skillful pilot, the reason of our father Eleazar steered the ship of religion over the sea of the emotions, and though buffeted by the stormings of the tyrant and overwhelmed by the mighty waves of tortures, in no way did he turn the rudder of religion until he sailed into the haven of immortal victory. No city besieged with many ingenious war machines has ever held out as did that most holy man. Although his sacred life was consumed by tortures and racks, he conquered the besiegers with the shield of his devout reason. For in setting his mind firm like a jutting cliff, our father Eleazar broke the maddening waves of the emotions. O priest worthy of the priesthood, you neither defiled your sacred teeth nor profaned your stomach, which had room only for reverence and purity, by eating defiling foods. O man in harmony with the law and philosopher of divine life, such should be those who are administrators of the law, shielding it with their own blood and noble sweat in sufferings even to death. You, Father, strengthened our loyalty to the law through your glorious endurance, and you did not abandon the holiness that you praised, but by your deeds you made your words of divine philosophy credible. O aged man, more powerful than tortures, O elder, fiercer than fire, O supreme king over the passions, Eleazar. For just as our father Aaron, armed with the censer, ran through the multitude of the people and conquered the fiery angel, so the descendant of Aaron, Eleazar, through being consumed by fire, remained unmoved in his reason. Most amazing. Indeed, though he was an old man, his body no longer tense and firm, his muscles flabby, his sinews feeble, he became young again. In spirit through reason, and by reason, like that of Isaac, he rendered the many-headed rack ineffective. O man of blessed age and of vulnerable gray hair, and of law-abiding life, whom the faithful seal of death has perfected. If, therefore, because of piety, an aged man despised tortures even to death, most certainly devout reason is governor of the emotions. Some perhaps might say, not all have full command of their emotions, because not all have prudent reason. But as many as attend to religion with a whole heart, these alone are able to control the passions of the flesh, since they believe that they, like our patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, do not die to God, but live to God. No contradiction, therefore, arises when some persons appear to be dominated by their emotions because of the weakness of their reason. What person who lives as a philosopher by the whole rule of philosophy and trusts in God and knows that it is blessed to endure any suffering for the sake of virtue would not be able to overcome the emotions through godliness? For only the wise and courageous are masters of their emotions. For this is why even the very young, by following a philosophy in accordance with devout reason, have prevailed over the most painful instruments of torture. For when the tyrant was conspicuously defeated in his first attempt, being unable to compel an aged man to eat defiling foods, then in violent rage he commanded that others of the Hebrew captives be brought, and that any who ate defiling food would be freed after eating. But if any were to refuse, they would be tortured even more cruelly. When the tyrant had given these orders, 7 brothers, handsome, modest, noble and accomplished in every way, were brought before him along with their aged mother. When the tyrant saw them grouped about their mother as though a chorus, he was pleased with them. And struck by their appearance and nobility, he smiled at them and summoned them nearer. Young men with favorable feelings, I admire each and every one of you, and greatly respect the beauty and number of such brothers. Not only do I advise you not to display the same madness as that of the old man who has just been tortured, but I also exhort you to yield to me and enjoy my friendship. Just as I am able to punish those who disobey my orders, so I can be a benefactor to those who obey me. Trust me then, and you will have positions of authority in my government, if you will renounce the ancestral tradition of your national life. Enjoy your youth by adopting the Greek way of life and by changing your manner of living. But if by disobedience you rouse my anger, you will compel me to destroy each and every one of you with dreadful punishments through tortures. Therefore, take pity on yourselves. Even I, your enemy, have compassion for your youth and handsome appearance. Will you not consider this, that if you disobey, nothing remains for you but to die on the rack? When he had said these things, he ordered the instruments of torture be brought forward so as to persuade them out of fear to eat the defiling food. When the guards had placed before them wheels and joint dislocators, rack and hooks and catapults and cauldrons, braziers and thumbscrews and iron claws and wedges and bellows, the tyrant resumed speaking. Be afraid, young fellows. Whatever justice you revere will be merciful to you when you transgress under compulsion. But when they heard the inducements and saw the dreadful devices, not only were they not afraid, but they also opposed the tyrant with their own philosophy, and by their right reason nullified his tyranny. Let us consider, on the other hand, what arguments might have been used if some of them had been cowardly and unmanly. Would they not have been the following? Oh, wretches that we are, and so senseless, since the king has summoned and exhorted us to accept kind treatment if we obey him. Why do we take pleasure in vain resolve and venture upon a disobedience that brings death? O men and brothers, should we not fear the instruments of torture and consider the threats of the torments, and give up this vain opinion and this arrogance that threatens to destroy us? Let us take pity on our youth and have compassion on our mother's age. And let us seriously consider that if we disobey, we are dead. Also, divine justice will excuse us for fearing the king when we are under compulsion. Why do we banish ourselves from this most pleasant life and deprive ourselves of this delightful world? Let us not struggle against compulsion or take hollow pride in being put to the rack. Not even the law itself would arbitrarily put us to death for fearing the instruments of torture. Why such a fatal stubbornness please us when we can live in peace if we obey the king? But the youths, though about to be tortured, neither said any of these things nor even seriously considered them. For they were contemptuous of the emotions and sovereign over agonies. So that as soon as the tyrant had ceased counseling them to eat defiling food, all with one voice together, as from one mind, said, Revelation 2. To the angel of the church in Ephesus write, the words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, who walks among the 7 golden lampstands. I know your works, your toil, and your patient endurance, and how you cannot bear with those who are evil, but have tested those who call themselves apostles and are not, and found them to be false. I know you are enduring patiently and bearing up for my name's sake, and you have not grown weary. But I have this against you, that you have abandoned the love you had at first. Remember, therefore, from where you have fallen, repent, and do the works you did at first. If not, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place unless you repent. Yet this you have, you hate the works of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who conquers, I will grant to eat the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. And to the angel of the church in Smyrna write, the words of the first and the last, who died and came to life. I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich, and the slander of those who say that they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested, and for 10 days you will have tribulation. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who conquers will not be hurt by the second death. And to the angel to the church, and to the angel of the church in Pergamum write, the words of him who has the sharp two-edged sword. I know where you dwell, where Satan's throne is, yet you hold fast my name, and you did not deny my faith, even in the days of Antipas, my faithful witness, who was killed among you, where Satan dwells. But I have a few things against you. You have some there that hold to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the sons of Israel, so that they might eat food sacrificed to idols and practice sexual immorality. So also you have some who hold to the teaching of the Nicolaitans. Therefore repent. If not, I will come to you soon, and war against them with the sword of my mouth. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who conquers, I will give some of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone with a new name written on the stone that no one knows except the one who receives it. And to the angel in the church in Thyatira write the words, the Son of God, who has eyes like a flame of fire and whose feet are like burnished bronze. I know your works, your love and faith and service and patient endurance, and that your latter works exceed the first. But I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess and is teaching and seducing my servants to practice sexual immorality and to eat food sacrificed to idols. I gave her time to repent, but she refuses to repent of her sexual immorality. Behold, I will throw her onto a sickbed, and those who commit adultery with her I will throw into great tribulation, unless they repent of her works. And I will strike her children dead. And all the churches will know that I am he who searches mind and heart. And I will give to each of you as your works deserve. But to the rest of you in Thyatira, who do not hold this teaching, who do not have learned what some call the deep things of Satan, to you I say, I do not lay on you any other burden. Only hold fast to what you have until I come. The one who conquers and who keeps my works until the end, to him I will give authority over the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron, as when earthen pots are broken into pieces, even as I myself have received authority from my Father, and I will give him the morning star. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Psalm 2. Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together as the Lord and against his anointed, saying, Let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord holds them in derision. Then he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, As for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. I will tell of the decree. The Lord said to me, You are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron, and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Now therefore, O kings, be wise. Be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear, and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and you perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. Proverbs 2. My son, if you receive my words and treasure up my commandments with you, making your ear attentive to wisdom and inclining your heart to understanding. Yes, if you call out for insight and raise your voice for understanding, if you seek it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity, guarding the paths of justice and watching over the way of his saints. Then you will understand righteousness and justice, and equity, every good path, for wisdom will come into your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will watch over you. Understanding will guard you, delivering you from the way of evil, from men of perverted speech, who forsake the paths of uprightness, to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil, and delight in the perversiveness of evil. Men whose paths are crooked, and who are devious in their ways. So you will be delivered from the forbidden woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words, who forsakes the companion of her youth and forgets the covenant of her God. For her house sinks down to death, and her paths to the departed. None who go to her come back, nor do they regain the paths of life. So you will walk in the way of the good and keep to the paths of righteous. For the upright will inhabit the land, and those with integrity will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the treacherous will be rooted out of it. Thus ends the reading for today. Never walk alone.